Good morning. I'm Aisha Khalid, and this is Quiet Echo for Saturday, January 10th, 2026. The questions we forgot to ask. I read a statistic this week that stopped me cold. 2 in 10 American adults now report having no close friends outside their family. In 1990, that number was 3%. In a single generation, we went from nearly everyone having at least one close friend to 1 in 5 people having none at all. And we barely noticed it happening. The Surgeon General calls it an epidemic. Researchers call it a crisis. But those words feel too clinical for what we're actually talking about. Millions of people sitting in rooms, surrounded by screens, wondering why the world feels so hollow. This week in Cedar Valley, we've been circling around the same question without quite naming it. Chloe wrote about parenting trends showing families stepping back from performance and rediscovering what she called real-life village energy, carpool crews, grandparents on deck, neighbors who show up. Dan wrote about a 70-year-old man in Santa Barbara who peddles elderly nursing home residents through the streets on a trishaw, giving them back the wind in their hair and the world they thought they'd lost. Different stories, same hunger underneath. We are lonely. Desperately, quietly, collectively lonely. And we've been so busy optimizing our lives that we forgot to ask whether the optimization was making us happy. The statistics are bracing. Around half of American adults spent time in a public space in their community last year: a coffee shop, a bar, a park. That's down from 2/3 just 6 years ago. 4 in 10 Americans have at most one person they could depend on in a crisis. Only a quarter of us believe that most people can be trusted. In 1972, it was half. We have more ways to connect than any generation in human history. And we are more disconnected than ever. I don't think we meant for this to happen. We didn't set out to build a society where people die alone in apartments and aren't discovered for days. We didn't plan to raise children who have hundreds of online followers and no one to sit with at lunch. We didn't intend for community to become something we scroll through rather than something we belong to. But here we are. Robert Putnam wrote a book called Bowling Alone back in 2000, documenting the decline of civic engagement in America. The title came from the observation that bowling leagues were disappearing, not because people stopped bowling, but because they stopped bowling together. The bowling wasn't the point. The point was people spending time together regularly, making friends, helping each other in times of need. That was a quarter century ago. The decline has only accelerated. What strikes me is that the solutions aren't complicated. They're just unfashionable. Join something. Show up regularly. Know your neighbors' names. Invite someone over for dinner. Put down your phone. Look people in the eye. Ask how they're really doing and wait for the answer. These aren't revolutionary ideas. Our grandparents would have found them obvious. But somewhere along the way, we decided that efficiency mattered more than presence. That convenience was more important than commitment. That we could outsource connection to algorithms and still feel whole. We were wrong. The Harvard researchers studying loneliness found that 3/4 of Americans want more community activities and public spaces where they can actually connect. They want green spaces and playgrounds and places to gather. They want what we used to have and somehow lost. Here in Cedar Valley, we still have some of it. The potlucks after church. The hardware store where Lars knows everyone's name. The front porches where neighbors wave. The library story hour where children pile onto laps. These aren't quaint relics. They're the infrastructure of human flourishing. But even here, I feel it slipping. The pull of the screen. The excuse of busyness. The slow erosion of the ties that bind. Saturday is my day for quiet questions. So here are a few. When was the last time you had a friend over for a meal, not for a special occasion, just because? Do you know your neighbors? Not just their faces, their names, their stories, their struggles. If you needed help at 3 in the morning, who would you call? Would they answer? What would change if you treated connection not as a luxury, but as a necessity, as essential to your health as exercise or sleep? The loneliness epidemic isn't something that happened to us. It's something we built choice by choice, convenience by convenience, which means we can unbuild it the same way. One dinner invitation, one front porch conversation. One trishaw ride through the streets with a 97-year-old woman who just wants to feel the wind in her hair. The solutions aren't complicated. They're just slow. And they require us to value something we've been trained to dismiss: the unglamorous, unoptimized, irreplaceable presence of other human beings. I don't know what 2026 will bring, but I know this: we weren't made to be alone. And no algorithm, no platform, no amount of digital connection will ever replace the simple grace of being known. The question isn't whether we can solve the loneliness epidemic. The question is whether we're willing to be inconvenienced by love. This is Quiet Echo. The people and town of Cedar Valley are fictional, but the events we reflect on are real. If you want to know how Cedar Valley came together, how a small town found its way from division to fellowship, pick up Quiet Echo. When loud voices divide, quiet ones bring together. Available on Amazon. Links in the show notes. I'm Aisha Khalid. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.
You've been listening to the Cedar Valley News Podcast, where small-town voices meet the headlines shaping our world. From faith and family to front porches and fields. We'll be back with more stories connecting real lives to real events. Until next time, keep your porch light on, your faith strong, and your heart open.